Hi friends, this is Olga Speaks directly from beautiful Vancouver, Canada, and in today's video I want to do a deeper dive into listening, CELPIP listening part 6, listening to viewpoints. We'll go over the questions after the listening task, and I will explain all of my choices and all of my viewpoints and why this or that answer is correct or incorrect. Hopefully this helps you get ready for your CELPIP test. If you're looking for more videos like this, feel free to subscribe to my channel, hit a like, and let me know in your comments what else you'd like to see on this channel, and if you have any other questions. I'm also attaching my CELPIP videos, the other videos, the practice videos that I have prepared, so make sure to check them out, and let's get started right now. CELPIP practice test, listening part 6, listening for viewpoints. You will hear a report once. It is about 3 minutes long. Then 6 questions will appear. Choose the best way to answer each question from the drop-down menu.
A new bill proposed by Paul Carter from the New Democratic Party is bound to stir a great deal of controversy. Mr. Carter, who represents a project called Reading for Freedom, proposes a novel way to approach jail terms. Some prisoners would be able to shorten their sentences by up to 36 days a year by reading books. Inmates in provincial prisons in Ontario would receive 3 days off their sentence for each book they finish reading. They could choose from a selection of 12 works of literature, philosophy, science, and classics, such as Shakespeare and Tolstoy. But reading alone would not be sufficient. In order to demonstrate that prisoners have read and comprehended each work, they would be required to write an essay that must make use of paragraphs, proper grammar, and spelling. Prisoners' access to the program would depend on the type of crime they committed, and also prisoners' behavioral record after incarceration. The key purpose of the project is to reduce conflict among prisoners and encourage personal development. Though innovative, the project has already met strong opposition from politicians, law enforcers, and the general public. Many wonder how reading novels can genuinely prepare prisoners for real life after being reintroduced in society. They ask how reading Shakespeare could help the prisoners find jobs after prison. Finally, some, like Evelyn Breach, a political science student at the University of Toronto, questioned how fair the system would be for those who are already disadvantaged. People who did not have access to proper education in the first place, or are not fluent in the English language, would not be able to read these books. This would be unfair for many Aboriginals and immigrants. According to Evelyn, the program does not give equal opportunities to everyone and could further victimize the ones whom the system has already failed. Chris Kendi, who directs the library system at penitentiaries in Ontario, is more optimistic about the project and says the main strength of the program is that it can change the prisoner's viewpoint. He says an inmate can leave prison more bitter and knowledgeable about crime, or enlightened by the world and the meaning of life. He adds that in his 20 years of experience working in prison libraries, he has seen books absolutely change people's lives, and he truly believes this program will do just that. The first reading of the provincial legislature is scheduled for Thursday, and the debate will continue in the weeks to come, when representatives from the general public and different branches of government are consulted. If the bill passes, it will come into force as early as next year across the province.
So after we listened to the viewpoints, to the text, we see the task right in front of us. The task is to choose the best way to complete each statement from the drop-down menu. So in front of us, we see 6 questions. It is a drop-down menu choice. Each question has 4 options, and we have a total of 4 minutes to complete these questions. So let's dive deeper into each one of the questions here. Question number 1. This story is about A. Option number 1, law that enforces prisoners to read books. Option number 2, proposed law to reduce some prisoners' sentences. Option number 3, man who spent 36 days reading books in prison. And option number 4, project that teaches prisoners to read and write. So the correct answer here is this story is about a proposed law to reduce some prisoners' sentences. So as it has been mentioned at the beginning of the text, this is just a proposed law. So this law hasn't been voted for, therefore it's just a proposed one. So option number 2 is the correct answer here. Let's look at the other options. So option number 1 does not work because it is not a law yet, right? They haven't voted for this law, and the law that would force prisoners to read books, well, nothing has been said about forcing someone to do something. Forcing someone to do something means making them do something against their will, right? This one, this topic focused more about a proposal, right? An option for some prisoners to reduce their sentences, right? So to spend less time in the prison. And this was an option for them, so they could go for it or they might not go for it. It's up to them, it's their choice. Option number 3 doesn't work here either. A man who spent 36 days reading books in prison. So this sentence is ripped out of the context. We did not have a man who spent 36 days reading books in prison. They only mentioned that the prisoners could reduce their sentence by 36 days per year if they were to read books, right? So this sentence is kind of mixed up and ripped from the context. And then option number 4, a project that teaches prisoners to read and write. Well, not exactly, because this is not a project. It does not teach prisoners to read and write. So to be able to read books, you already need to know how to read, right? So this was more about the project who gives those prisoners the opportunity to reduce their sentence, right? Nothing has been mentioned about learning to read and write since the beginning. It was just mentioned that the prisoners who were to go in for this project, they already need to have some basic education to be able to read and then write an essay about what they have read. So the correct answer here is option number 2. The story is about proposed law to reduce some prisoners' sentences. Question number 2. Prisoners' access to the program would depend on their. And the options for this question are option number 1, frequency at the prison's library. Option number 2, crime and behavior in jail. Option number 3, knowledge of grammar and spelling. And option number 4, previous reading level. So the correct answer to the question number 2 is option number 2. Prisoners' access to the program would depend on their crime and behavior in jail. So it has been mentioned that only those prisoners who are eligible for the program will be participating in it, and one of the criteria they are looking at will be the type of the crime they have committed and also the type of behavior they have shown in jail. So option number 1, frequency at the prison's library. Well, option number 1 is irrelevant because nothing has been mentioned about how often they go to the library and how often they attend the library, right? So option number 1 does not work here. Their access to the program has nothing to do with how frequently they went to the library. Option number 3, knowledge of grammar and spelling. Well, that's not one of the criteria for the prisoners to be able to access this program. It has been mentioned, though, that to be enrolled in this program, right, they need to have basic skills of reading and spelling, because after reading the books, they will need to write an essay that will show that they have comprehended what the book was talking about, the main ideas from the book. Right, so knowledge of grammar and spelling is not one of the criteria that they will be choosing for them to participate. So option number 3 doesn't work here. It's irrelevant in this case. And option number 4, previous reading level, well, they are not going to assess if they read anything previously or not. So no information has been provided on that. So this option is also irrelevant. It has not been mentioned that their previous experience or their previous reading level would have anything to do with this. So the correct answer for question number 2 is prisoners' access to the program would depend on their crime and behavior in jail. Question number 3. The purpose of the project is to, and the answers for this question are option number 1, diminish conflict and promote personal growth. Option number 2, teach prisoners to read and write better. Option number 3, increase prisoners' level of education. And option number 4, help prisoners to find jobs when they leave. So the correct answer here in question number 3 is the purpose of this project is to diminish conflict and promote personal growth. So option number 1 is the best fit here. So why is this the purpose of the project? Is because a lot of officials were trying to find multiple ways in how to basically decrease the conflicts and also be able to give people the opportunity to grow and develop personally. So option number 1 is the best fit here. Let's look at the other options. Option number 2, teach prisoners to read and write better. Well, that was not the whole goal of the project. It's not just about educating people to read and write better. It has been mentioned that being able to read and write is one of the criteria to be able to participate in the program, but this is not the bigger goal of the program. So option number 2 doesn't work. Option number 3, increase prisoners' level of education. Well, not necessarily. It hasn't been mentioned straight ahead that the option was to increase the level of education of people who have been imprisoned. It was supposed to be so that to be able to participate in the program, they already needed to have basic reading and writing skills, right? To be able to read a book and then to be able to write an essay on it. But they were not aiming at increasing their level of education. So option number 3 doesn't work here. And then option number 4, help prisoners to find jobs when they leave. Well, nothing has been particularly mentioned about finding the jobs. The main goal of the project was to promote personal development and personal growth, and therefore diminish the conflict around these people. So basically, if we look at all of the options here, the rest of the options, so option number 2, number 3, and number 4, they focus on more specific things, whereas option number 1 talks more broadly. So promoting personal growth and diminishing the conflict was the whole purpose of the project. Question 4. Critics argue that the project, option number 1, should focus more on recent literature. Option number 2, penalizes those with poor English language skills. Option number 3, creates conflict between the educated and uneducated. And option 4, only helps prisoners find jobs if they've read Shakespeare. So this is a pretty interesting question. The correct answer here is actually option number 2. So critics argue that the project penalizes those with poor English language skills. So if we look at option number 1, the project should focus more on recent literature. That is completely irrelevant because nothing has been mentioned by the critics on the having the opportunity to focus more on the recent works, whereas in comparison with the classics. So this option is irrelevant here. If we look at option number 3, creates conflict between the educated and uneducated, you might think that this option is the best here at first, but then if you think about it, creates the conflict. Well, there is actually no conflict, right? Nothing has been mentioned about any kind of conflict. it has been mentioned though that people who have poor English language skills will not be eligible to fully participate or like take the benefit of the program, right? Whereas option number 3, it doesn't actually state anything about like already having a conflict between the educated and uneducated. So option number 3 might seem right, but in fact it's irrelevant. And then option number 4 only helps prisoners find jobs if they've read Shakespeare. Well, nothing like that has been mentioned in the text, in the original text. Well, the main focus of this project and proposal was not actually finding the jobs and was not actually qualifying for the jobs. It was more about resolving this conflict, reducing the conflict, and then shortening the sentence of the people who have been imprisoned, right? So it has nothing to do with them looking for jobs, and also Shakespeare is irrelevant in this case. So the correct answer is option number 2 in this case. Question 5. Chris Candy, who's worked in prison libraries for 20 years, believes the project. Option 1 will fail because prisoners are better. Option 2 will help prisoners earn more money. Option 3 will transform some prisoners' lives. Option 4 will make prison administrators optimistic. Well, the correct answer here is Chris Candy, who's worked in prison libraries for 20 years, believes that the project will transform some prisoners' lives. So actually he mentioned this in his indirect speech, that he truly believes that this is a unique project that is going to transform some prisoners' lives. Right, option number 1 doesn't work here because the fact that prisoners are better has never been mentioned in the text, and obviously the project failing also has not been mentioned. So option number 1 is totally irrelevant here. Option number 2 will help prisoners earn more money. Also, this option is as well very irrelevant here because the goal of the project was not earning money. It was more about transforming people's lives and giving them another chance. And option number 4 will make prison administrators optimistic. Well, it hasn't been stated directly about making the prison administration members more optimistic or pessimistic, so this option is irrelevant here as well. So he really believes that this project will transform some prisoners' lives. The correct option here is number 3. Chris Candy, who's worked in prison libraries for 20 years, believes the project will transform some prisoners' lives. Question 6. If the bill becomes law, it will. Option 1, apply to the whole province. Option 2, apply to the whole country. Option 3, be debated by the general public. And option 4, be discussed by government branches. So the correct answer here is, if the bill becomes law, it will apply to the whole province. They were talking about a specific province, and therefore, if the bill were to be passed and become a law, it would be applicable throughout the whole province. Option number 2 doesn't work. They were not referring to the whole country. They were talking about a specific province. Option number 3, the law would be debated by the general public. Well, that hasn't been directly mentioned. That if that bill became the law, it would have been debated. So it doesn't necessarily work here. Although, looking at the options, if we hadn't really known the for sure answer was option number 1 would be applicable throughout the whole province, option number 3 might have seemed very close. And then option number 4, be discussed by government branches. Well, nothing has been directly mentioned about being discussed by various government branches. In fact, it hasn't been mentioned at all, the discussion by the government, right? It has been mentioned only that there would be some discussion by the public, And there is some ongoing discussion right now by the critics and the people who have strong thoughts about it. So option number 1, if the bill becomes law, it will, option number 1, apply to the whole province. The correct answer is option number 1. Thank you so much for watching. This was CELPIP Listening Part 6, Listening to Viewpoints, and we went over the questions and various scenarios, and I hope that you find this useful. If you're looking forward to getting more videos like this, subscribe to the channel, hit a like, and check out my other videos that I have prepared on the CELPIP test. Thank you so much for watching, and have a very good one. Bye!